Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Welcome. Time once again for the Purpose-Focused Advisor. Rob Brown here, along with my good friend and co-host, Phil Calandra. And we're really excited today to have John Stadtmueller on our call. That's a mouthful, John. I practiced it a little bit before we...
You got it right. Yeah, you're right on the money. Nice job.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty good if I can say it slowly. If I try to say it too fast, then it gets all jumbled together. But John is an interesting guy. He is the leader of an organization called Good Advisors Finish First, which I think is an awesome name for a community of advisors who is out there doing their best to be their best at serving their clients and working with each other for best practices and ideas that they can share so that they're continuously getting better. And I guess part of the reason I love that is a coach to financial advisors. That's part of what Phil and I do. We're constantly looking for ways to help our clients get to new levels of success. So John, welcome to the podcast. And please give us a little bit about your background, because it's been an interesting journey to get to this point.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Rob. Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Appreciate that intro. It has been an interesting journey. So I can really get long-winded and get really deep into things. So I'll try to skim the surface a little bit here, and then I'll let you guys jump in if you want me to dig deeper into anything or have questions. But basically, been in the industry for 20 years, been an advisor, wholesaler, broker-dealer, back office. So I've was at Schwab as well. So I've seen things from the discount brokerage side. So seen the industry from a lot of different angles, built a lot of relationships, networks, seen a lot of different things over my career. And this whole cause, Good Advisors Finish First, I didn't know what it was ultimately going to be called, but it's something that has been building inside of me for quite some time. In fact, very early on, something that stands out, I've told this story before. Before I was ever in the industry, I was bartending out in Utah. And I was applying. I wanted to get into the industry. I had a finance degree. Phil, you noticed I went to UW-Oshkosh. And so I wanted to be an advisor. I wanted to get into the business. And I was interviewing at a lot of different places. And I went through one particular interview series where the culmination was a test, basically, on how you would deal with clients. And it walked through a couple different scenarios, basically set up a scenario where you had to hit a particular bogey for a quarter or a month or whatever it happens to be. And there was a client in front of you that really didn't need the service you were selling. And I responded to that thinking, well, you do what's in best interest of the client. Obviously, that's the right answer. You don't focus on the other metrics. Well, I was wrong. They flat out said, we don't need people who are going to answer this survey this way. We really want somebody who's going to convince the client to buy something that they don't need. And I'm like, that's kind of backwards. So that, I guess, right out of the gate, gave me an interesting taste as far as what to expect in the industry. Where things really, I guess, started to the epiphany moment, or where things really kind of came to a head. I would deliver presentations. In my previous role, I was with LPL Financial as a regional vice president, and I would deliver presentations very often with the same introduction. I'd have all the advisors in the audience pull out their phones and Google financial advisors are. And the algorithm has changed a bit, but back when I did this originally, or when I was doing this, the autofill in Google would come up with a whole host of negative things. Advisors are crooks, they're a joke, they're just this whole list of negative things. And so just to get a rise out of everyone, get attention, kind of have a little bit of fun. But the way that I would always position it diving into the presentation was, hey, this is how John Q. Public views our industry. Let's pay attention to what we're talking about here today. You really want to focus on getting better, being better for your clients. At one particular conference, I did that intro, and at a happy hour later in the day, I got cornered, literally back against the wall. This advisor's in my face. John, you don't need to be so negative. You don't need to be bringing up what we already know. You're focusing on the wrong things. And that conversation really stuck in my mind for a good couple of weeks. And I started to reassess my process. Was I wrong in, basically stating the obvious? There is a lot of negative perception about the industry. Should I not do that? Should I just ignore it? And that's when I had my epiphany moment. Why the hell, as an industry, do we accept that we are always going to be on our heels, apologizing for the bad, apologizing for fees, apologizing for being compensated, apologizing for being successful, apologizing? I'm not Bernie Madoff. I'm not trying to rip you off. I'm not trying to steal. There's too much good in this industry. I've been around it. I've seen it. I've seen the impact that advisors can have in clients' lives, and it's immeasurable. There is no monetary value you can put on some of the things that I've seen personally. I've experienced in my life. And so I had this moment where we got to focus on the good. We got to stop apologizing. Let's focus on the good. And so this concept came into my head. Good advisors finish first. The idea is just do the right things and you'll ultimately finish first, whatever that definition is for you. If it might be monetary, it might be peace of mind, quality of life. I think it does. We were talking about this earlier. I think it really ties into what you guys are doing, purpose driven. What is your purpose? What are you trying to accomplish with your business and in helping clients? If you do the right things, you're focusing on the right things, you will ultimately finish first. You'll be more successful in the long run. And so that's the background of this. Do you want me to get into transitioning to more, or did you have questions on that to start?
Well, let's stop there, because that's a lot to take in, and I think you made some great points, because I have been in a lot of those presentations that have started with you realize that you are lower than dirt, and whether you believe that or not, whether you are that or not, it kind of has a way of weighing on you. So one of the things that we do with our clients is really encourage them to be truest fans of themselves, that we have to believe in ourselves and what we do if we really want to go out and do good work. So putting that good advisor on the front end of talking about things, I think, is extremely important.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating conversation, John. Thank you for that. What, as a 22-year veteran myself, and I still work with small group of clients, why do you think that the financial services industry has gotten to this point? I mean, we've done it to ourselves. I recently saw something, and I have to dig it up to confirm. It was a little video sketch, and the title of it was "Everybody Has a Mortgage." Now, of course, everybody does not have a mortgage, but the point being that we're so driven in the United States of America by making money or making a living that everybody's influenced by something that isn't always best for the other individual. So we can call ourselves fiduciaries. I've seen it, you've seen it. And like you said in your intro with the examination, the little assessment that you took, that's going on every single day. And why have we not figured this out? You figured it out. The best advisors have figured it out, but why as a whole do we still get put in the category of pond scum and used car salesmen?
It's a good question. And I think it transcends the industry. I think a lot of this is just human nature. You can find a lot of similarities in other industries where, there is a bigger cause. There's a bigger purpose for me in pursuing this. It's just, I happen to know the industry, and that's where I'm planning on starting. The business is technically good people finish first. The idea is we're just starting with advisors and we'll go from there. So there is a lot more, I think, beyond the industry, just in terms of human nature. It's accepting the status quo. Why are things being done a certain way? Well, it's always been done that way. Well, why? Let's question it. Let's look into it. Let's dig deeper. There's a list of principles that have come to light throughout the course of building this cause, and one is to be radically open-minded, which I stole directly from Ray Dalio. He talks about being radically open-minded, and I think that's a big part of it, Phil, is advisors just not just advisors, people in general, will often just accept things as they are rather than questioning, being open-minded and saying, maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a different way for us to, I've always had to apologize for my fees. Like, you see so many advisors who are nervous and oh, I can't possibly tell, this client that I'm being compensated or how I'm being compensated. Well, own it.
Yeah.
The value you deliver, it should not issue if you're doing the right thing and you're delivering value to clients. But there's just this precedent that's been in place for so long that it's difficult to get out of that. And so that's what we're really trying to do is disrupt thinking. And a big part of it, like I said, is being open-minded to other ways of doing things. And I guess one other thing, and you guys see this too, the industry also self-sabotages so much. You see advisors throwing stones at each other and ripping on business and doing we have a list of core values. One is abundance. There's plenty of opportunity. Just focus on being better, doing the best for your clients, and things will work out.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think what came to my mind when you said, thinking of fees or thinking about justification of being a professional advice giver, what I've seen and what we see in our own coaching clients is if you question your own value or you cannot communicate your value proposition and you have in your heart, you have a client experience that's going to deliver the most desired financial outcome, cherished outcomes for the client. If you don't have that in your heart, in your head, you're never going to get it. And I think that's kind of what you're saying there. So, I'd like to learn more, Rob, I don't want to hijack the whole conversation, but I'd like to know more about what the community does, how is it supporting advisors that are out here in the trenches, like myself and the coaching clients that we work with.
Yeah. And so this really, I'm always thinking of things in terms of killing two birds with one stone. How can we maximize and get the most results out of minimal effort? And so this all happened, as I mentioned, while I was with a regional vice president role. So in that role, it was same store sales. So I worked with existing LPL advisors, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. And this idea of how do we demonstrate good advisors finish first? How do we, it's not necessarily saying who's good or bad. Only the end client can say that. It's about how do we turn the lights on indiscriminately? How do we really put things on top that maybe somebody isn't necessarily doing the right things, but they may not know any better. And so rather than, again, throwing stones or putting people down, let's at least give them the option that they know that there's a better way. Let's demonstrate and show that there's more success. So in that role, as I worked with advisors, one of the big things that would happen is advisors would have a lot of the same questions, a lot of the same things. John, do you know a book of business for sale? John, do you know a junior advisor looking for a home? What's a best practice that somebody else is doing down the road? This whole list of things. And there's a lot more to this in terms of this open transparency and this idea of being open-minded is there is no one right way. And oh, by the way, if I answer wearing my corporate hat, I'm going to bias that answer based on what's best for me, what's best for the business, which there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way things are done. Why don't I give you an opportunity to speak with your peers directly? And I'll get out of the way, let that happen. And there's going to be opportunity that comes back just simply by allowing these conversations. So it really all just started, and COVID certainly helped with it. We just did things through Zoom meetings. So we would run a recurring series where advisors would just share and collaborate, and things just kind of started snowballing from there to the point now where we have this digital community for advisors to share on a regular basis, real time. But some of the big unique differences is this is a private community. So advisors can be vulnerable, real, share very openly with one another. And one thing that has just absolutely floored me, humbled me, I still have a difficult time believing is true, is how willing advisors are to share and help one another when they have this opportunity to do so without ulterior motives. So I mentioned we have this list of principles. The first principle is everyone is invited. We have advisors in our community that are managing $1 billion plus. We have advisors that are literally first 6 months in the industry and everywhere in between. So everyone is invited to join, share ideas, grow together. But we have, and the second principle is seating is limited. We don't lock the door. Everyone's invited. People are welcome to come in, but we do have a list of core values: humility, reciprocity, pass the torch. There is no oxygen for people to share BS. And you could come into the community, you could share, things that are going to puff your chest out, make you feel good, but there's no oxygen for it. So we've created this environment where advisors have that opportunity to share directly with one another. Here's the fintech, here's the custodian I use. Here's the financial planning software. Here's the coach that I use that has helped my business. Let me talk about what the impact that they've had on my business and what's happened. And so in a lot of ways, it turns things on its head from how things are typically done in the industry, where it's the product providers or the back offices that are driving the conversations. What we're trying to do is the advisors drive the conversations. Then we bring in the third parties when and where it makes sense. And so really, I try to boil it down to what's the simplest way to describe what this is a more efficient way for advisors to connect. We're doing meetings. We have this online platform. We have all these things going on, but ultimately the rubber meets the road when people pick up the phone and they talk to one another directly. And that has led to an enterprise coming together between two advisors, 300 million, that grew from scratch, advisors just organically meeting through the community. A couple of advisors have moved from one firm to another. We've had advisors, again, choose different technologies and things based on the conversations. And these end up being very, very meaningful, real, dramatic, providing a dramatic impact on the bottom line, which ultimately serves the client. Our purpose is pursuing better client outcomes as a community.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm glad you took the time to go through that. And so much jumps out to me from what you said. For those of you who have been longtime listeners to this podcast, that I wrote a book called The Truest Fan. And that's what I referenced earlier. One of the principles of being a truest fan is being a truest fan of yourself, but also being a truest fan of others, the idea of treating other people the way that you want to be treated. And that's one thing that I see over and over again in this industry. Good advisors, top performers are always willing to help others out. They do see the abundance. They don't feel as though if they share something, that other person is going to steal it and somehow they're going to lose something. And then being able to share that confidence becomes really important. And John, you talked earlier about the amazing difference that you've seen advisors make in individual lives. I would extend that a step further. Advisors make huge differences in the communities that they serve and in the causes that they care about, because good, purpose-focused, good advisors do give back, because that's just a part of what they do. And it sounds to me like that's another thing that comes from the networking and the conversations that you're able to have on your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this ties in a little bit, back to what Phil was saying, and asking about why are people doing things a certain way? Why have advisors just accepted? There's they don't, there's, again, some people just don't know any better, and it goes beyond the industry. But I love how you're saying that, Rob, the most successful, right? Like, the way we use the terminology, finish first, the most successful, you have the most success by openly sharing. And like I said, I'm still floored. I'll have advisors, they'll upload documents, they'll share, here's our standard operating procedures, here's our, one example, we had somebody who was hiring and bringing on a new junior advisor. They, from the community, I mean, they were able to write like line by
John,
line.
let me stop
Yeah,
you for
go
a
ahead.
second.
Sorry. Yeah.
Phil, were you able to hear John for the last 30 seconds or so?
Yep.
Okay, I'm not hearing either one of you guys. Maybe it's mine.
Uh-oh.
Yep. It was good for me.
We lost your headphone there.
Can you hear us now?
He's gonna have to read lips now.
Dead?
Okay. Yeah, I think I was having some trouble with my my earbuds. So we'll get the audio production team to kind of patch this together. But and John, I know this is kind of unfair to ask you, but can you kind of pick up with where you were let off before I stopped? And
What was the last question? Maybe that would help him. Do you remember kind of where we were?
I guess, do you want me to go back? I was trying to tie in what Phil had said earlier. Did you catch that, Rob?
yeah, you were saying that you're talking about what Phil said earlier. Yeah, that'd be a great place to pick it up.
Okay. So going back a little bit to what Phil had shared earlier and his question about, why are things being done? Why do advisors just accept and do things a certain way? I think in a lot of ways, there are people who literally, they just don't know any better. They haven't seen the success that you talk about, or it's not necessarily celebrated in the industry of, you will be more successful with that abundance mindset that you're talking about, Rob. And it's so unbelievable to see it firsthand in the community. What I was going into or mentioning is just one example. We had an advisor who was onboarding a junior partner. The number of community members who reached out and helped that advisor line by line draw up the document and have everything sewn up to the point where they felt confident in delivering this to the individual. It saved time. And again, a big part of what we're trying to do is efficiency, but that all comes from the fact that all these other advisors are willing to share. And a lot of that is, here's where I screwed up. This is what I did wrong. Here's what I would have done differently. And that's awesome as well. That's maybe even better to see the advisors who are willing to admit where they made a mistake in order to help other advisors.
That's so good.
Maybe that's why I'm consider myself to be such a great coach. I've made so many more mistakes than most people. I've got lots of. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have admitted that on.
Well,
on
they say that the best coaches were the worst players. I don't know, Rob.
Well, I'm not going to go completely down that road, but
no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. John, I have a question. Where do you think, if you had to tell us, what are let's just pick two. What are the two biggest mistakes that you see, that you could curate from the community? Because I know you see all the back and forth. What are the top two things that prevents an advisor from really being a good advisor, being a great advisor? Because one of the things we always try and focus on with our podcast guests are, everybody's struggling with something. We've all been, we all don't have sunshines and rainbows, right? What are you seeing out there? What are the top two things that most advisors struggle with? Because if we can help them through your community, through the work we do in coaching, if we can remove those, then it's just going to lift, the rising tide will lift all boats. And maybe that's the beginning of the advisor community doing what I believe we were all put here on earth to do. We were here to advise and to help people. Human nature is failed with money. That's why scripture talks about it so darn much.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. I'm trying to, think, how do we boil it down and get into, two things. I think first and foremost, this goes into what Rob was talking about with his book in Truist, being so a big mistake you see. If I'm not comfortable in my own skin, I like how you talked about that, Rob. I got to be a fan of myself and own and know what I'm doing. If I don't fundamentally have that from the get-go, I'm immediately going to go into a client meeting and with the mindset of, oh, I don't know if I don't want to, maybe I have to be careful about disclosing these fees or the drawback. I'm not necessarily going to give the personal, the real authentic advice and own the fact that I'm going to be compensated for it. I personally, I, I think another principle is learn from everyone, follow no one. And I don't think there's one right way to do things, but one thing that I have always been a big fan of is not using the choice clause with a client. If they're paying you to deliver advice and help them achieve their goals, then why are you giving them an option of what they may think is best? What are they paying you for? They're paying you ideally to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I know you so well, and I know your circumstances so well that I believe this is the best option for you. Again, our tagline is pursuing better outcomes as a community, uh, putting yourself, going even beyond standard, not necessarily doing what's just best for the client. What would you do in their shoes in that exact same circumstance? What would you do? So being open, honest, and true to yourself, I think is one thing that again, I think it's beyond the industry in terms of just human nature, a challenge for all of us. But a second one that is also ties into human nature, but I think it's very prevalent in the industry is kind of what we were getting into, Rob, making mistakes or, being willing to admit that here's where I failed. Here's where I didn't. How many advisors are comfortable saying, I don't know? You don't hear it, right? And again, this is beyond the industry, but it's very, very prevalent in the industry. Oh my gosh, I can't possibly tell this client that I don't know. Well, why not? Why can't you say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but guess what? You're paying me. I'm being compensated to help you achieve your goals. I'm going to find out for you. And so I think that is a huge miss that a lot of advisors have, is just being open to saying, I don't know, because you're probably not going to know everything. You're not going to be an expert. And, a big thing that we all talk about is finding your niche in working with clients is, really owning who you are, what you can deliver in terms of value, and then being open and willing to take help from maybe your back office, maybe a wholesaler, maybe a peer in the community, but finding those resources that can help you deliver that better result for the clients rather than trying to scramble and pretend that you know everything.
Yeah, those are some awesome points.
Yeah.
You're great at coming up with them on the fly there, John. You look when we started like you weren't going to be able to answer that question, and you gave a great answer. And I would like to reemphasize a couple of points which I think are really critical. That choice close, and not offering a choice close, offering your best advice. I can't tell you how often in talking to advisors as we're working together, they say, well, how can I close better? And they ask it in a way like they want to be taken back to sales school, which there's nothing wrong with sales school. But if you ask questions the right way, and Phil and I talk with people about this all the time, if you ask questions the right way, the client will tell you where they want to go. So it's just up to you to put them on that path, and you don't have to give them a choice. And so I think that's really critical. And then that second point you make about saying, I don't know. My first 30 days of training when I started out as an advisor at Dean Witter on the 70th floor of the World Trade Center back in 1985, one of the lessons I learned from a guy named Stuart Lee was, if somebody asks you a question and you're just a 20-something-year-old kid getting started in the business, tell them you don't know and you will go find the answer and come back to them. I can't tell you how many times I've used that thought in a meeting, whether I'm used to be working with clients as a financial advisor, or I'm working with clients who are my coaching clients now, and we're just not quite digging into it. Just the ability to kind of admit where you are. It doesn't make you any less of a good advisor, a great advisor, because the people who are best at what they're doing are always trying to get better. They're not afraid to say, hey, I have to go dig into this a little bit more so I can provide the advice that I need.
Yeah, that's good.
So we're running up against the end of our time. So it's time to land the plane. John, just as we close out here, I just love to give you an opportunity, maybe just take, another minute or two. And first, is there another piece of advice that we didn't get to that you would like to suggest to the audience? Again, just a little nugget. And then also, what's the best way to connect with you and get to know more about Good Advisors Finish First?
Yeah, I think we really hit home. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate you guys having me here. Like we talked about, I think there is a tremendous amount of alignment in what you're doing and your philosophy with what we are pursuing and what we're trying to do. So I think we really hit home on a couple of the big points. I think I guess maybe expanding a little bit on those couple of things is back to our core principles or core values. The first is humility, is this mindset of you will never arrive. And that's the one really awesome thing to see in the community is regardless of where you are, where you are, what stage you're at in your career, there's always an opportunity to learn and get better. And having that mindset that we were talking about, I don't know, let me find resources. And so I guess the other advice I would have is, for advisors, whether it's through our community, whether it's peers, whether it's talking to Truist, whether it's wherever, find those resources that are going to help you continue to get better and hold you accountable to continuing to get better. You owe that to your clients. And ultimately, as we're talking about, you'll be more successful if you have that mindset and that's what you do. So if anyone is interested in learning more about what we are doing, goodadvisorsfinishfirst.com. If you type that in, it will pull directly into goodpeoplefinishfirst.com. So we have both domains, goodpeoplefinishfirst.com and goodpeoplefinishfirst.com. So you can check out the website. There's an opportunity there to sign up for our mailing list, learn more about our events. And we do have a very simple application if anyone is interested in kicking the tires and taking a look at things firsthand. As I mentioned, everyone's invited. This isn't for everyone. Seating is limited, but everyone's invited. We'd love the opportunity to get to know someone and see if there's a fit and an opportunity for all of us to learn and grow together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that open invitation, John. Phil, anything else to add here as we close the show?
Wow. I mean, I think we could keep going, but we got to stop. I'll be in touch with you, John. I love what you're doing. And maybe you can invite me to the community as well.
You're invited, Phil, by the way. So yeah, I'll send you an email.
Well, yeah,
Thank you.
Phil would be a great person to have in your community for sure. Well, it's time to close out the episode. John, we're going to have you back because I get the feeling there's some other really good stuff happening in your community that we'll want to keep the audience aware of. And I just like the message that you're getting out there, because obviously it's so similar in many ways to ours, because we love financial advisors and who are serious about their business, being authentic and really taking care of their clients. And so if we can help extend that, perpetuate that, that's a really important thing to us. To our audience, thank you as always for listening. And remember, we're rooting for your success. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truistfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.